You're in your 20s. You have time, but time is the one thing you cannot get back, and that is the entire game when it comes to building wealth early. This is not a video about get-rich-quick schemes or the lottery of lottery tickets. This is about the honest, unglamorous truth of how wealth actually builds in your 20s. The real trade-offs nobody talks about, and why starting now matters more than almost anything else you could do. If you want to build real wealth and have freedom in your 30s and 40s, stick around. Subscribe to the channel because we talk about this kind of stuff every single week. Let's start with the most counterintuitive truth. In your 20s, your savings rate matters far more than your income. This breaks the brains of most young people. You hear about six-figure earners and startup founders, and you think that's the path to wealth. But here's what actually happens. Someone in their 20s, making $40,000 a year, who saves 30% of it, is building wealth faster and more powerfully than someone making $150,000 a year and spending everything they make. The person making $40,000 and saving $12,000 per year is compounding that money for 40+ years. The person making $150,000 and saving nothing is just converting their time into lifestyle inflation, and when that job ends, everything ends with it. This is so fundamental that it's almost boring to say out loud, but it's true. You cannot out-earn a low savings rate. You can try. You can chase promotion after promotion, client after client, and if you spend 95% of what you make, you will never build wealth. But if you save 50% of a modest income in your 20s, you are playing a completely different game. The math is unforgiving. A 22-year-old earning $35,000 a year can become wealthier by age 50 than a 32-year-old earning $120,000 who waits to start saving. That's not motivational. That's just math. And it means the real decision you're making in your 20s isn't which job to take. It's which lifestyle to choose. That lifestyle choice is the trade-off nobody wants to talk about. Building wealth in your 20s means your friends are going out on Thursday nights and you're staying in. It means your colleagues are financing new cars and you're driving something 5 years old. It means expensive restaurants, vacations to trendy places, the latest technology, designer clothes. These are not part of your equation. For years, maybe a decade, you're watching people around you enjoy things you could technically afford, and you're choosing not to. That's psychologically harder than it sounds. It's not deprivation exactly, but it is delayed gratification at a level most people in a wealthy society have never experienced. You can't Instagram it. You can't talk about it at work without sounding insane, and it's lonely. But here's what happens on the other side of that trade-off. At 28 or 29, when your peers are just starting to think about investing, you have $50,000 or $100,000 already in motion. At 35, when they're panicking about retirement, you're watching your money do most of the work for you. By 40, the difference is not a nice house versus a nicer house. It's financial freedom versus another 25 years of the same job. The trade-off is real and hard, but the alternative, waking up at 35 with no assets and the same paycheck you had at 25, is worse. So you accept the trade-off, but you don't accept poverty. This is critical. Saving 50% of a $35,000 income is different from earning $100,000 and saving $50,000. You have to live on something. The goal is not to be miserable. It's to be intentional. You spend on housing, food, and transportation. You spend on things that matter to you personally. But you cut the noise. You stop paying for status. You stop spending to fill emotional holes, and you direct every dollar you do save into assets that work for you while you sleep. This leads to the second honest reality. Income matters, but not how you think it does. Yes, earning more money is always easier than saving more money. One extra dollar earned is easier than finding another dollar to cut from your budget. But in your 20s, the income growth that matters is not the annual raise your employer gives you. It's the income-raising skills you deliberately build. These are not mysterious, they're not sexy, but they are predictable and within your control. The first income-raising skill is the ability to sell, not necessarily to be a salesman, but to communicate value. to present an idea or a solution or yourself in a way that makes people want to say yes. This skill is the difference between someone who gets promoted and someone who stays in the same role for 5 years. It's the difference between a freelancer who charges $40 an hour and one who charges $200. Most young people never deliberately practice this. They assume people will just notice their good work. They don't. You have to tell people what you've done and why it matters. You have to frame your work in terms of what it solved, not just what you did. This is trainable. It takes practice, but it's absolutely learnable. The second income-raising skill is the ability to learn new things faster than your peers. Technology changes. Industries shift. Entire job categories disappear and are replaced. The person who can look at a new tool or skill and become competent in it in weeks instead of months is always more valuable. This is not about being naturally intelligent. It's about having a system for learning. It's about reading widely, trying things, failing cheaply, iterating, and building what researchers call learning velocity. You practice this in your 20s by deliberately taking on projects that are slightly outside your current skill set. You force yourself to become uncomfortable. You document what you learn so you can teach others. This skill compounds over decades. By your 40s, you're unshakable because you've proven to yourself 50 times that you can learn anything you need to. The third income-raising skill is understanding value chains. Most people in their 20s trade time for money directly. You show up, you work, you get paid. But the people who build wealth understand where value is actually created in their industry. They understand who gets paid the most and why. They understand what problems are worth solving and what solutions people will actually pay for. This understanding leads to better decisions about which roles to take, which industries to enter, and which side projects are worth pursuing. It's the difference between someone who spends a decade climbing a ladder that's leaning against the wrong building and someone who chooses a better building first. These three skills, the ability to sell, the ability to learn, and the understanding of value creation, are not things your employer will teach you. You have to be deliberate about building them. You practice them in your current job, yes, but also in side projects, in volunteer work, in any arena where you can take on higher stakes problems and solve them. And as these skills improve, your income doesn't stay flat, it grows. And suddenly, saving 50% of a $40,000 income becomes saving 50% of a $70,000 income. Then $100,000. The savings rate stays consistent, but the absolute dollars compound. This brings us to the final truth, and it's the one that makes all the previous sacrifices worth it. The compounding advantage of starting young is not a small edge. It's a cheat code. Let's be concrete. Assume you're 22 years old. You commit to saving and investing $10,000 every single year for the next 8 years. That's $80,000 total that you personally contribute. You stop contributing at age 30, but you leave that money invested. Assume a 7% average annual return, which is reasonable for a diversified investment portfolio. By age 65, that $80,000 has become approximately $1.6 million. You did the work in your 20s. Compounding did the work in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. Now imagine you wait until you're 32 years old to start the same plan. You contribute the same $10,000 per year, but only for 15 years instead of 8, because you're trying to catch up. You invest $150,000 of your own money, and at 65, you have approximately $2.4 million. You invested nearly twice as much money to end up with barely more money. The difference between starting at 22 and waiting 10 years is about $1 million in purchasing power, in opportunity, in freedom. There's no way to overstate this. The person who starts saving and investing at 22 is not just ahead by a few percent. They are ahead by an entire magnitude. They're playing a completely different game entirely. And the frustrating, beautiful, terrifying truth is that this advantage has nothing to do with being smart, coming from money, or getting lucky. It has everything to do with starting. Starting young, starting small, and staying consistent. This is why the honest version of building wealth in your 20s is not inspirational or exciting. It's disciplined. It's boring. You're not disrupting industries. You're making intentional choices about lifestyle. You're deliberately building income-raising skills, and you're putting money to work for decades. That's it. That's the entire playbook. And yet most people don't do it. They wait for the right time. They wait for the promotion. They wait until they feel more stable. And then they're 35, and the math has changed, and they're playing catch-up for the rest of their lives. So what does this actually look like as a 22-year-old? It looks like taking a job that pays decently and offers room to learn, not necessarily the highest-paying job available. It looks like moving into a modest apartment or roommate situation, not a luxury one. It looks like cooking at home, using public transportation, shopping secondhand, and saying no to lifestyle creep every single week. It looks like spending your free time learning skills that matter to your industry, not just scrolling. It looks like tracking where your money goes so you know exactly what you're saving. It looks like choosing to invest that money rather than let it sit in a savings account earning nothing. It looks like boring, consistent, unglamorous decisions week after week. And it looks like understanding that you're not depriving yourself. You're trading short-term consumption for long-term freedom. Every dollar you don't spend on status today is a dollar working for you tomorrow. Every skill you build instead of scrolling is an income-raising multiplier. Every year you stay consistent is another year compounding is working on your behalf. By your early 30s, you have options. By your 40s, you have power. By your 50s, you have freedom. That's the honest deal. That's what building wealth in your 20s actually delivers. The hard part is believing it when you're 22 and everyone around you is living differently. Your friends are posting vacation pictures. Your coworkers are talking about their new cars. Social media is a constant stream of consumption and lifestyle. And you're home on a Saturday night with a spreadsheet, tracking your net worth growing by 1%, completely invisible to everyone. It's hard. It really is. But the alternative is worse. The alternative is waking up at 45 and realizing you've been on the same hamster wheel for 2 decades. That your paycheck still barely covers your expenses. And that retirement is not a plan, but a fairy tale. If this message resonates with you, like this video. We're building a community of people who care more about wealth and freedom than about impressions and status. And honestly, that kind of person is rare.